Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the ICD, my name is Koen and I'm an artist from Belgium. It is truly a great honor for me to speak to you today. All too many times, the public policy vision of culture and art is um, limited, for example, to mere entertainment or to stimulate local tourism. However, an international approach to culture can only be made credible if it's conducted with the utmost respect for the work, for the substance of the work, and for the artists. On that note, I would like to thank Mr. Donfried and his team for their genuine interest in my work. I would like to give you some inside information about the way my work came about to what it is today. Yes. This is my studio. Most of the time, I work on site specific situations, but a studio and a place to work is absolutely necessary. With this reading, I would like to show you where and how my works develop. Most of the time, I work in seclusion. This particular solitude and independence is absolutely vital for me to be able to focus on my work. Nevertheless, this particular freedom is relative because there are a lot of unwritten rules or historic contexts to work with. The art world is organic and constantly in motion. It is a social network of constant changing individuals and positions. On top of that, I think as an artist, you carry a certain responsibility towards society. To communicate, you try to develop your own language. My work and the visual language that I speak renews itself during the process of its own invention. As an artist, I strive for enhancement as well as renewal. The purpose of this language is to communicate the viewer's interpretation. The purpose of this language is to communicate. The viewer's interpretation will be based on his or her own knowledge, references, and viewing experiences. Charlotte van Beulaere writes about my work. The body of work of Koen de Dekker is just the beginning of a bigger and uncontrollable work that fluctuates or swings in memory and thoughts. So I see my work as a generator of ideas, not an illustration. The work is the ideas. The whole body of the work is thinkable. I try to approach space and form from different angles. In my sculpture work, I always attempt to let the shape communicate with the space, its environment, and also the viewer. Scale in this is very important. So first I would like to show you some sculptures, and later I will try to tell you where everything comes from. The sculptures. I always attempt to let the shape communicate with its environment, and with the viewer, of course. Sometimes the viewer can even enter the sculpture. By keeping the sculpture transparent, you get to see form from all different angles. You see the form and its structure at the same time, like a spatial drawing. So with my work, I try to talk about scale, points of view, form, and space. I'm not only interested in the form of things, but most of all, how they are made. Besides the research towards shapes, property, scale, point of view, I am also interested in materials and how they behave. Purely technically, I like the basics of form and structure. For example, forms that come out of a mall, or objects that are blown up or made by pouring a negative form full with different materials, how materials bend and so on. I can look at materials and how they behave and just show these properties as pure as possible, such as the curve that develops by a hanging chain. By, for example, attaching equal-sized bamboo sticks in tetrahedrons and ectahedrons, I could create an endless sculpture which can be performed by a different person in a performance or on one occasion even by the public. Another of my spatial works is now in the collection of the Smakking Gent. But I made this temporary installation originally for a country location. It is a large, red, clear woven sculpture that takes on the confrontation with the landscape by creating scores for this sculpture as well. And scores, with scores I mean like a partiture. You know what a partiture is? Yes? Okay. I think there is something wrong with the... By creating scores for the sculpture as well, the museum can adapt the size of it depending on the size of the room it's exposed in. So I already told you that scale for me is very important. And I want to talk also about rescaling. About rescaling. On photographs, all artworks are equal in size. We collect them in our mind and archive them in our personal knowledge of art history and images. Several works of mine can be exposed on different scales, depending on the room they're in or on the ergonomical scale towards the viewer. An idea does not have a format, a shape, a color, or a material. It can exist as a sketch, a plan, or a score. Then we should consider it as a video. It's a moving image. So several works of mine can be exposed on different scales, depending on the room they're in or on the ergonomical scale towards the viewer. An idea does not have a format, a shape, a color, or a material. It can exist as a sketch, a plan, or a score. The physical properties of the production of such an idea depends on the location, the strength of the material, and the scale this idea should become in real. For an exposition in St. Lucas Library, I made a work in a viewing tank. It was a glass case of 50 centimeters by 2 meters and only 20 centimeters deep. I divided the tank in small spaces and suggested a museum exhibition in different rooms. I hereby made an exhibition catalog on one single copy, which is now available in the library for the students. The pictures in this catalog are photographed in such a way that it looks like they are large objects in a museum. But as you can see, they are quite small in real. The work does not only consist of its shape, but also defines the negative form in the area around it. Sometimes this surround space becomes a part of the installation. Another one of my works consists of 3 cubes that I divided into 8 smaller cubes and in which I installed a strong source of light. This light source shines in small lines on the ceiling and on the walls. The public could replace these cubes and as such create an interaction of light against the walls and the ceilings. Maybe there is too much light, no? Another work I want to show you is something I did in Warsaw in Poland. In Warsaw in Poland, I took a step further into the idea of the surrounding negative space. In this case, the public area. I saw that people had made illegal windows in blind walls and decided to add to that, like here, I added an illegal stairway from one apartment to another. And the orange sewer you see, I also added, and the sewer is explaining which space this was all about. L'Essai-Lazare, this is a sculpture on the archaeological site of Ename, consisting of 3 equal volumes, each time placed in a different angle. It is monumental as well as light as a feather. From a distance, it even seems as if it's as if it's evaporating and disappearing. So as you can see, my work shows a variety of attitudes towards space and form, and I approach it from different angles. But now I would like to take you back in time and explain where these ideas emerged. I studied at the St. Lucas Institute in Brussels. It's a school just around the corner, during my high school as well as my master years. I graduated from the experimental studio in which we were able to try out and investigate every possible medium. During this master year, I attended a speaking engagement by an artist from Antwerp. His name is Narcisse Tordoir. He invited me to spend a 3-month period in Amsterdam at the Rijksacademie. The Rijksacademie is a residence where artists from around the globe can meet and where everyone has access to a studio. These accommodations allow you to work under the best circumstances, surrounded by the best care, technical supplies, and advice from other artists and curators from around the world. Besides working space, you have different project rooms to present and to try out new installations. So this was not my studio, this was a project room. Oh, no good idea. Okay. This is one of the works I made in this, it was a flying bat. And one day, Dan Graham, who's an artist from the United States, came along as an advisor. And he was so tired and suffering from a jet lag that he asked to sleep in this work. And he asked me, do you want to film me when I'm sleeping? So I have a video of Dan Graham sleeping 30 minutes in my project room. This was probably his way to give his reaction or his advice to the work. Another project I did there was the drawing line, where I drew the sketches out of my sketchbooks on a bigger format and hung them all next to each other to create a circle around in the space. After this 3-month period, I applied as a participant at the Rijks, and I was accepted. I met advisors such as Luc Tuymans from Belgium, Matt Mulliken from the US, Gerardo Mosquera from Cuba, Dennis Sacharopoulos from Greece, Richard Deacon from the UK, of course Dan Graham, Hu Hanru from China, and many others. And in addition, I sat together with artists as Carlos Amorales from Mexico, Moshe Kwalanga from South Africa, Runa Islam from the UK, Guy Bahamotz from Israel, Tomoko Take from Japan, and many others, just to give you an impression of the international approach of this institute. And here I made my first steps in the art world. A residence such as the Rijksacademie will force you to question your work from day one. I tried to bring the little work that I had developed thus far as one single unity or story. Aside from my spatial installations, I made videos and drawings of objects that I had collected as reference material. I spread this collection out in long rows on the floor. I considered them as inspiration and study material. At that point, this was not art, this was inspiration material for me. During the Open Studios in '99, I created an endless sculpture while showing my collection on a long iron shelf. At that point, I called it my memory archive, referring to the mnemonic device they were when I discussed my work with others. These objects helped me to remember ideas. And this was one of the ideas. It is called the start of an endless sculpture. Another residence I did was in Belgium, in the Vlak in Waterschei. It is a workplace for visual artists. Here I realized the universal scale of all things with the objects I just showed you. As I told, I used to call this collection of objects and shapes my memory archives. Each object holds its own significance in color, shape, and material. By ordering these objects, their properties interfere with each other. I tried to order them by color, material, or meanings, and I looked at them from different angles. I assembled a wide range of shapes, sizes, and forms, and at first I made two groups. These closed shapes were classified under seed shapes, such as bottles, exoskeletons, platonics, geometrical balls, large seeds, cocoonish shapes, etc. Opposite those stood a second collection of growing shapes, constructions, networks, and rhizome-like structures. Soon enough, I realized that every possible ordering started showing unlogical overlaps. Everything seemed to be interconnected. Other taxonics, such as natural versus artificial, just did not add up. Each object holds its own significance, and by ordering these objects, their properties interfere with each other. So at the FLAC, I had the chance to develop these digital archives. Only when I started to photograph them against the black background, I noticed they all became equal in size. Initially, I chose objects based on their assembly. This was a point of interest for me as an artist. By rearranging and confronting them, I obtained an array of meanings and interconnections. Right about here started an interesting research which was about much more than ordering physical properties. The true meaning between these objects developed as a gestalt. You can compare these properties with the resonance between two sounds that become a new sound, or in this case, a third meaning. So this is when these invisible properties became my goal and subject of research. By placing random objects next to each other, I suggested a new meaning. By looking at things in this topographic way, you start to look at things in a different perspective. You can look at things in very different ways. Or you can, for example, look to the world through a window, like a painter would do or a photographer. Or when you look at things by walking around the object, you can experience it like as a sculpture. By folding it open, you can reach an object like a doctor or an engineer would do. I wanted to order them randomly from a topographic point of view, still in doubt what to do with them. But I knew this collection could become endless. And a question to myself was, I wonder if artists stand still in the world that surrounds them, or do they operate in the front lines of innovation, where they turn things inside out? By thinking of this, I realized I could put everything into this project. First of all, I tried to put some documentation images I found on Google into the same logic of the universal scale project. But in fact, I can also put all my sculptural work you saw before in the same frame. So this project is not finished yet. In fact, it is just beginning. Universal scale of all things, it's the origin, but maybe also the whole work. Each and every of my works I made can be categorized within this topographical plan in which you can discover many secret hallways. Thank you for your kind attention.
I want to know your inspiration. And after, I'll ask you the second question.
Actually, my inspiration were these objects because these objects, a lot of them I found, for example, in the attic of my grandmother's. A lot of the objects I just find in the streets, in stores. And these are my real inspirations. But for the rest, what's inspiring me is to work into space, to make three-dimensional forms. But what do you mean with inspiration? To become an artist or to make art?
How to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think as a child, you first like to draw. This is how it starts. And then you see other art pieces. For example, do you know this work of the goat of Rauschenberg? I don't know if you know it. There's a goat with a tire around his stomach. It was a work I saw when I was very little. And another thing is that there were artists in my family, so I was inspired by that. I was inspired by the attic of my grandmother, it was full with stuff. There were a lot of art pieces also in the house of my grandmother. But actually, why I do this kind of art and not like painting or drawing is because in the beginning, actually in the first year at St. Lucas, I studied, how do you say, commercial publicity graphics, and I was not happy with this. And in the second year, I moved over to, it was called free graphics. It was printing, silkscreen printing, and all of this. And I still didn't feel that I was free enough. So in the third and the fourth year, you could choose an option which was called experimental studio. And in this experimental studio, you could do anything you want. So you could use sound, you could use smell, you could use, there were no limitations. And I think this is what I really wanted to do, to have no limitations and to create without any medium, without fixing to any medium.
One more question is, do you think your art will change the society's violence? Really, this is my question, because the main purpose of art is to make humanity kind. Do you think, how do you think? Thank you very much.
I don't think that art itself can change society, but what art does is it goes into the mind of people. It can change minds. You can think more free. You can have new ideas about anything, about how to look to the world, like I did. But also as an artist, what you do actually is when you make an exhibition, a lot of people come and they interfere with each other. It's a social event. Or for example, I engage myself to do this show in Ninove, where I try to mix important artists with very youngsters who just graduated. And like I told, an artist has towards society, he has how do you say, responsibility in a way. It's not only about selling art, because you have a lot of.
I thank you for showing your work. I would like if you allowed me to make a comment, because I am an artist myself, and for me, art is not something to be kind, to make the world kind. Art is to do with awareness. And awareness is vision and integration of all the part of yourself, even the bad one, even the shadow. So maybe if you're more aware and you have integrated this part, then finally you are more kind because you understand more. But artist is not making something nice, you know, and kind, and to do a cushion with the thing next and be harmonized in that way. It is an harmonization at a very deep inconscient depth level. And so it can speak to society because the society is made of people and they look also to have this inner integration. But this was my answer to kind. We are not gentle people as artists. We are not bad, but we are not kind.
Thank you so much for showing your art. Previously, we had speeches about cultural citizenship and talking about European identity. To what extent, for you, do you feel that your art is adding to this European identity, or would you consider your art as more something global, something worldwide? Thank you for answering.
I will try to answer this question. I think as an artist, you you create a new identity. You become a part of the art world. And the art world can be local, it can be global, it can be the area around it. And most of the time you meet different people from different areas. And I think you become a citizen of the art world. And so you become a citizen of a global world, not just like a nationality of borders where they speak the same language, for example.